Welcome, beautiful souls, to another episode of the Sacred Roots podcast. Today, we're going to go on a journey to meet joy. I really want to explore joy with you and how you can bring more joy into your life and what that actually means, because there is actually a deeper meaning and a deeper invitation than to just experiencing pleasure and fun and happiness. Joy is much more than that. So let's explore that. If you want to be filled with joy in your life, this episode is for you. So first, let's have a look at what joy really is. Because there might be a first misconception here, which is that most people might think that joy is an emotion, right? Like happiness or sadness or anger. It's something that you feel, so it must be an emotion. Well, as you might be guessing from the way I'm saying this, it is not an emotion. Joy is actually not an emotion. It's a spiritual state. So let's have a look at what emotions really are. So emotions are sensations that we feel in our body in response to an exterior stimuli. Though you can also feel emotions because you're creating them within your mind. Because when you visualize things or when you think about things, your mind actually doesn't make the difference between what you're imagining and your reality. Your mind thinks it's the same. So your body is responding to it the same way. That's why visualizations are so powerful, because your mind thinks it's the reality, right? And so whether you are experiencing something in your external or internal reality, your body is going to respond with a sensation. And that physical response is usually lasting 30 to 90 seconds. We say that emotions last 90 seconds in the body. And if they last longer and they become like a lingering sensation, then they are feelings. It's a bit different. But joy is actually not an emotion. Joy is a spiritual state. It's a beingness. And where does joy come from then, if it actually doesn't come from external or internal stimulation? It comes from being and feeling deeply connected to yourself and to spirit. That's why you actually see a lot of spiritual teachers, a lot of gurus, a lot of sages that laugh all the time because they're joyful. They're happy. They have that spark. And so when you are actually very connected to spirit and to yourself, which actually is the same, you are then filled with that divine energy that makes you joyful. And the more you can be in that state of joy, the more you are actually disconnecting yourself from the emotions of the ego. Because your emotions are created by your ego. And so usually they happen in response, like I said, to something that is happening in your internal or external reality. But we know that the spiritual path invites us to surrender the ego to the soul. I love to use the example of the Jnana mudra. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, probably not. But if you are looking at this on YouTube, you're going to see what I'm doing with my fingers. If you're listening to this podcast, you can see, so I'm going to explain. When we meditate, we have this typical mudra. So mudra are positions that we do with our hands. And we see the index that is bowing and surrendering to reach the thumb. So the index represents the ego, and the thumb is you, your soul, universal consciousness. And so when you surrender your ego and you don't give it all your power, you can then connect with that spiritual state of joy, with that sense of oneness, with bliss. You're on a spiritual path, right? So I want to specify here, I am not talking about killing the ego. I am really not a believer of you have to kill the ego. Quite the opposite. I think the ego is an amazing tool that is actually there to, first of all, you need it for your human experience. It's there to keep you safe, there to make sure that you're loved, which is really important when you're a child in order to survive. And then as an adult, if you learn to master your ego and to use it as a tool, a kind of compass that is showing you where do I need healing? Where am I triggered? What is activating me, annoying me, frustrating me, making me angry? These are all signs, because these are emotions that are created by your ego that are showing you more of who you are and more of where you need healing. And the more you actually use your ego in that way as a compass, as a friend that is showing you the way to actually be the most enlightened, the more you actually see that your ego is an amazing tool on your spiritual journey, spiritual path, to actually be able to experience that state of joy. So this leads me to the second step, which is like how to actually experience that state of joy. Well, by using your ego, by asking yourself, what is triggering me? What is activating me? What is annoying me? Where do I have trauma that I need to let go of? Because if we go back to our first intention, I said, if you want to be filled with joy, this episode is for you. These two words are like being filled with joy. It's very interesting to see how we actually use these words because they have a huge meaning. Imagine that you are a glass of water and that water is your joy. And so you want to be filled with joy. You want to be a water that is filled with that, right? Well, in order to be a container, a glass of water that is filled with that water, you first need to empty it of the dust, the herbs, and maybe the coffee that you put in your glass before. And so all the other things that are not water that could potentially be in your glass are your traumas, your fears, your beliefs, everything that is preventing you actually from experiencing that joy, from filling yourself with that essence. And so in order to be filled with joy, sometimes we don't realize that when we say that, we are actually implying that we first need to empty ourselves of everything that is not allowing us to experience joy, that is not allowing us to welcome that sacred water of joy. So it means healing. It means looking at your traumas in the eyes and asking them, where do you come from? How can I heal you? How can I release you? How can I let go of this? How can I reclaim a little bit of myself by letting you go? And I think it's a beautiful image of what the spiritual journey actually is, because quite often we think that being spiritual is all about, being connected to the divine and experiencing unconditional love and bees and butterflies. And there's a kind of innocence to it. And while that is all really beautiful, and I really hope that my podcast is actually helping you get there, because that's the point, the journey to experiencing that spiritual state of joy and being filled with that sacred water of joy, that journey is not joyful. The journey of emptying your glass of the mud, the dust, the old herbs, the trauma, and all the dirty things, it is not fun. It's getting your hands in the mud. It's dirty. It's painful. The spiritual journey is hard, and it is not for everyone because it invites you to do a lot of introspection, and not everyone is ready for that. But it's absolutely worth it because you get to experience that state of joy in the end. When you are starting a spiritual journey and you have had the normal life that society wants you to have, where it's making you believe that you just grow in a family, you get a degree, you go to university, you get a job, you get a wife or a husband, you get a house, you get kids, you get a dog, you get a nice car, you get fun holidays, and then you get the hell out of here. This is kind of the dream that society is selling you. At some point during that dream, you're like, wait a minute, I actually have all these things, all the material things that I thought were going to make me happy, but I still feel empty. What is happening here? So that is the matrix. That is the story that we are being sold and that we all follow until we realize that there must be more to this. I think I missed something on the way. Let's go back and look. And so I'm sure you know what I'm talking about if you're listening to this podcast and you're called to my work. And that's actually when you realize there's more. So the reason why this life that you're sold, this dream that you're sold, the reason why it doesn't work, it's because it's selling you external pleasure and satisfaction. It's making you chase the high. And all these desires potentially come from your ego and desires and beliefs that society has put in your mind that your ego is chasing, because it believes that it's going to make you happy and joyful, right? And so it's when you actually start to do the work of emptying yourself of all the fears, you start to raise your standards. You actually start to live completely differently. Because when you live the dream of society of just get all the things and then you'll be happy, what you're actually doing is having a pretty low level of happiness and peace. And then those external things are bringing you satisfaction and pleasure. And satisfaction and pleasure are emotions. They are not lasting. Like I said, an emotion, it's 90 seconds in the body. And after that, you're going to be chasing the other high, because the release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins is making you happy in your body. You're feeling it. So you're like, okay, well, this must be it. I'm just going to be chasing the next thing. But in the meantime, when you're waiting for that next thing and you're on the chase and you're in these like in between moments, your level of happiness and peace and joy is pretty low, which is why you're chasing all those things. And then you realize that you still have all those things, and that because your level of happiness is pretty low, you're actually not really happy and joyful. So that's when you usually start to go on a spiritual journey, because there's something inside of you, your soul, that is telling you there must be more to this. It's not possible. And so the spiritual journey is then going to be about healing yourself, learning to love yourself deeply, accept yourself radically, express yourself unapologetically, and then share your magic and power with the world, which is going to raise the standard, raise the bar of how you feel every day, until potentially you reach that state of joy every single day. And that spiritual journey makes you embody your soul, be connected to really who you are deep down in your soul, and be connected to spirit. And because you're still human, of course, you're still going to have emotions. You're still going to feel sometimes excited and still going to have pleasure, and you're still maybe going to be annoyed and angry and frustrated. And that is fine, because the purpose is not just to be a spiritual being. I mean, you came here to have a human experience after all. So let's have the human experience. And let's use the emotions as tools to grow and evolve and expand more. But when you have embodied that spiritual state of joy, the emotions that you're feeling and that your ego is making you feel are not as, I don't know if I want to say important or powerful. I think what I'm trying to say is that you're less attached to them and you're giving them less power, because you know yourself, you know where they come from, and you know that they're just tools to heal and expand more. So the journey to really living that state of joy is a healing journey. It's a journey of raising your standard, raising your everyday level of bliss, peace, happiness, and joy. And that, my darling, only happens through healing, facing the traumas, putting your hands in the mud, and letting go of all the emotions and blocked energy that is stuck in your body, in your sacred container, where you want to feel the water of joy. And how do we release emotions and all those muddy things? Through feeling them. So it's gonna be messy. The spiritual journey is a messy one, but it's really worth it, as you might be experiencing right now. I do want to finish though with a little, it's not a side note because it's a pretty important note. I do want to finish with a truth, and I guess an invitation to be clear on your own expectations. Because life is actually not about joy. This might surprise you that I might be saying this. Life is not about joy. Life, the purpose of life is about expansion. It's about growth. It's about evolution. And are you going to be able to experience joy? Yes, of course. And that's all I wish for you. And the more you do the work, the more you will. And it's just going to become your everyday state, you know, like your standard. But life is not about joy. And I think it's very important to really integrate this truth, because if you don't, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be expecting to just feel joy and be joy all the time. But like I said earlier, you are a spiritual being, so you can have that spiritual state of joy as your standard, but you're still having a human experience. And that humanness inside of you is going to experience challenges, obstacles, discomfort. The ego that is still there is going to feel discomfort. And every time you expand, your ego is uncomfortable. It's like, no, I don't want to go there. This is scary. I don't want to do that. Because that's what your ego does. It wants you to stay in your comfort zone, whereas your soul wants you to expand. Life is always expanding and growing. And your soul actually chose to incarnate in this particular crazy time in 2022 because she knew it was going to be uncomfortable. But she also knew it was going to be an amazing opportunity for you to expand more and probably to help in this huge transition that we are in. But because we can only birth what we already are, we can only lead by example, we can only express really with authenticity what we embody, all those changes need to happen on an individual level first before they can happen on a collective level. And that's why we're all kind of struggling. and being faced with challenges and things that we need to let go of, and invited to step into our power and change our beliefs. Because if we all do that on an individual level, then we're going to step into our magic, and we're going to be able to birth the new earth, the golden age, the new era, whatever it is that has been prophesized and that we are experiencing right now. And so the journey of joy is not a joyful journey. I think that's going to be my conclusion. It's making me laugh because it's kind of ironic. But I do think it's very important to acknowledge and to know, because if you're just expecting to be joyful all the time, you're setting yourself up for big disappointment and kind of for failure. Even though failure for me doesn't really exist, it's a construct of the mind. I'm using this word because I know that you know what I mean. At least I'm being understood when I use this word. So, because I always like to finish my episodes with something very practical, my invitation for you is going to sit with the next question for the next week or so until my next episode. And the question is very simple, but it's going to be a very powerful question for you on your not so joyful journey to joy. So the question is, what is activating me? What is triggering me? And maybe you can create like a page in your phone, in your notes app, or in your notebook, something that is always going to be close to you and a place where you can always write down what is activating you. Might be a sentence that you're reading in a book. You know, right now in my reality, I keep attracting more information about the dark ages and how women were treated at those times. And I mean, certain men were also treated really badly because they were too powerful. And so that really activates and triggers me, really brings up a lot of anger in me. And so I write that down in my journal, and then I welcome the emotion and I do my healing work. So every single trigger, like I said, is an invitation for you to heal, to learn more about who you are, to learn more about who you came here to be, because your soul also has emotions. You know, the belief that your soul is just pure bliss and pure happiness, that is actually not true. Your soul also has emotions, especially the closer you get to the earthly planes. When you incarnate, the more you're gonna have those emotions, and then you are human. And but your soul also has its own personality and can have their own emotions. But I mean, this is a topic for another podcast. So sit really with all those triggers and all those things that are activating and annoying you, and then be courageous enough and loving to yourself enough to actually ask yourself, where is this coming from, and how can I heal this and release this? And yeah, really sit with it and then welcome it, feel it. And that's how you're going to release it and raise your standards to be just more joyful every single day. So, my darling, I hope this episode helped and inspired you. If you want to be supported actually on that not so joyful journey to joy, my invitation would be for you to have a look at the mystery school that I am opening now, end of September, the Sacred Roots Modern Mystery School, because this is part of the journey of what we're going to do. The initiation that I'm taking you through for the 9 months of this program is really a soul embodiment. So it's about calling in that spiritual state of joy, raising the standards, healing in sisterhood, letting go of all your traumas, and stepping into your magic, stepping into your power. So it's going to be a really beautiful journey. I'm really, really excited about opening this school, because really this has been part of my purpose and who I came here to be and what I came here to offer to the world. So yeah, it's big for me. I'm really excited. So yeah, I'm going to add the link in the show notes if you want to know more details. I'm going to be doing a free masterclass beginning of September, so stay tuned if that's something that you're interested in. But for now, I am sending you all my joyful love and all my blessings and healing energy on this spiritual path that is a healing path, but really worth it healing path. I love you and I wish you a wonderful day. And don't forget to be magical today.